Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Information Minister responds to Jamaica being excluded from Canada's list of visa-free travel countries. PNP appoints Dr. Andre Horton to shadow cabinet. And later in sports, West Indies tour of Pakistan in danger of being postponed. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. Information Minister Robert Morgan has responded to concerns about Jamaica not being included among countries where known travelers will now be allowed visa-free access into Canada. Mr. Morgan was speaking yesterday at a post-cabinet press briefing. More in this report. Canada's visa-free travel has been extended to nationals from 13 countries. These include Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis, Panama, Argentina, Costa Rica, Uruguay, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Thailand and the Philippines. This would be for known travelers, that is, someone who holds a Canadian visa obtained over the last 10 years or holds a valid United States visa. But Jamaica was not included, and this has raised concerns.
Well, what I do know is that our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Camilla Johnson-Smith, constantly has engagement with various partners. And we have a very good relationship with the people of Canada and the government of Canada. But I think we should be very careful in how we analyze this visa matter.
Information Minister Robert Morgan says every country is free to assess who they want to allow into their country. He says the decision to restrict Jamaican passport holders is sometimes related to certain challenges faced by Jamaicans.
But Jamaicans, I think, need to also recognize that there are several challenges that we have as it relates to us as a country in terms of persons who present problematic documents. A large number of Jamaicans present problematic documents when they're applying for visas to several countries. We have a large number of persons who have criminal records who are trying to apply.
Mr. Morgan says there are also significant issues with Jamaicans attempting to illegally cross the border to enter some of these countries.
It's whether they go through Mexico to the United States or go further up through to Canada. And also, there are many incidents of persons overstaying. So whenever these things happen, we have to contextualize them. This government will continue to work to advocate on behalf of our citizens to find ways for ease of travel across the world.
Dr. Andre Horton has now been appointed to the People's National Party's shadow cabinet. The party presented Dr. Horton as the Shadow Minister for Commerce, Technology and Innovation. Dr. Horton has been the PNP's Member of Parliament caretaker for the constituency of West Central St. James since January 2019. He also served as a senator in the Upper House. Prime Minister Andrew Holness remains concerned about the crime rate in Jamaica. Speaking in St. James recently, Mr. Holness called for a discussion to be had around regional security. O'Shane Masters reports.
It's no secret crime continues to be a major concern for many Jamaicans. Despite a decline in murders and shootings this year compared to the same period last year, criminals continue to wreak havoc across sections of the island. Currently, 3 parishes are under states of emergency, and visitors, like many citizens, have been asking, when will it end? This was Prime Minister Andrew Holness addressing the Caribbean Nation Security Conference in Montego Bay, St. James on Wednesday.
I do not have to tell this audience that there are no quick fixes in the area of security. Our successes against the threat that we continue to face requires an unrelenting focus and commitment on all our parts.
Mr. Holness highlighted some areas of concern for Jamaica and the Caribbean. He also renewed calls for the building of partnerships in the fight against transnational and organized crime.
Our successes against the threat that we continue to face requires an unrelenting focus and commitment on all our parts. It also requires consistent evaluation and analysis to ensure the effectiveness of our efforts, as well as the willingness to correct course when we assess that the measures we implement are not bearing fruit.
Environmental security, climate change, and cybersecurity are among the major topics to be discussed during this year's CANSEC meeting, which is being held under the theme Strengthening Regional Security Through Informed Action.
This theme deliberately captures what is required of us as security and defense officials. We must strengthen our approach to both long-standing, new, and emerging threats impacting our region.
Meanwhile, Mr. Holness called for discussions around regional security to include the potential impact of climate change and weather events on national security.
At the same time, however, we must begin to examine how security and defense can contribute to reducing these environmental footprint. I look forward to the recommendations emanating from these discussions, including how we can infuse planning for disaster scenarios into the annual plan of activities for our defense and security sectors.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Justice Minister Delroy Chuck is reiterating calls for the justices of the peace across the island to ramp up their efforts in helping to tackle domestic violence. Mr. Chuck made the appeal while addressing JPs at a function in St. Anne recently. In 2021, the Domestic Violence Intervention Center, which falls under the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF, reported 8,160 cases of domestic violence. However, in 2022, the number of reports increased by 6.4%. There is also an increase in the number of men now making reports. While the numbers for this year are not yet available, Justice Minister Delroy Chuck says domestic violence is now a major contributing factor to the murder rate in the country, which is why he is calling on families to reach out for help when they have issues.
A wife or spouse who's constantly beaten up. She doesn't know she can go to victim service to get attention and counseling, and hopefully eventually for the spouse to go to RJ. All that is in her and his mind is how to end it. And how to end it is, how can I get poison or a knife or a gunman to settle the matter?
Mr. Chuck is also calling on JPs to get more involved in carrying out their duties. He says they can be more useful, especially in assisting in reducing the number of cases of domestic abuse and violence in the country.
So we are going to ask her to work closely with the restorative justice centers, the justice centers, with all of the services we offer, but also with the police, SSP Powell and all the police officers. I'm sure they will join with you on a regular basis. I really think that, Madam Chairman, for all the police stations, you should have at least 6 to a dozen JPs who are, should I say, the management group for that community where the police station is.
Mr. Chuck says this can work as he has seen it in his own constituency. He says Grants Pen was known to be a very volatile area, but the community is now calm to a great extent.
When I went there, I got nothing but lashes. That I was the one handing out guns and bullets, because there was so much fight, so many killings. And when I started out, because I went and I sat on the gully banks. I tried to I was working with the pastors and with all the other stakeholders, because I told Superintendent Rosalie MacDonald-Mark at the time, once I'm MP, this place is going to be quiet. And I'm happy to report for the last 20 odd years that's been one of the quietest places in Jamaica.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Praedial larceny remains a large system of organized crime in Jamaica. Superintendent Oral Pasco is an officer in the National Praedial Larceny Prevention Unit in the Ministry of Agriculture. Speaking on TVJ Smile Jamaica this morning, Superintendent Pasco explained that it's now an illicit money-making business.
Cattle probably worth, well, millions, because say, for example, 200,000 per cow, and your times at probably about 7 million, give and take.
$200,000 per cow?
Well, based on or more, based on or more, based on with a red pole or so forth, up to 500,000-600,000.
Wow.
And you can then discount and say, I'm going to release all of these for 50,000 each. The person who steals it make a quick profit. They move it on to the person who takes it to market, and the person who purchases this animal get it at a great discount.
He also said the prosecution rate is not where the team wants it due to several challenges.
It has to go to the rigors of a court. So you, the person who of course lost the animal, if you came and reported, you will have to have evidence that is yours to recover it in the first place, and then you'll have to come and support the case in court. So if you decide, which has happened a lot of times, you make the initial report and they can't bother because they'll take 2-3 hours, and you know, so that is one of the problems that we're having.
The University Hospital of the West Indies recently unveiled its 128-slice CT scan suite. This is to provide safer and more accurate diagnosis for conditions such as a stroke. Physicians can use the scan to show the circulation of blood not only within a small part of the brain, like most CT scanners, but for the entire brain.
It can be adapted to provide three-dimensional imaging. So in the past, we used to look from in front and from the side. Now we can orbit the organs. And there are speakers who will talk to us more about the details of what the scanner can do. But just to give you an idea, a whole body scan, head to toe, in 5 minutes.
The hospital's medical chief of staff, Dr. Carl Bruce, says the team is moving to advanced diagnostic testing and interventional capabilities at the facility.
Time, you'd have seen us open our SPEC CT nuclear unit with the International Atomic Energy Agency. You'd have seen us open our Women's Center with our new three-dimensional mammography, which the ladies will be happy to know does not squeeze the breast or squash it as much as the old analog machines used to. And we've gotten good feedback on that, something very, very serious.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
Jamaica's net international reserves, NIR, increased by $36 million in the month of May. The central bank says the NIR was valued at $4.28 billion, up from $4.17 billion at the end of April. The country's reserves cover 26 weeks of goods and services imports. Further afield, Meta Platforms on Thursday introduced WhatsApp Channels, a feature that the social media giant said would help make the app a private broadcast messaging product. Users in Colombia and Singapore will be the first to receive access to channels. Over the coming months, Meta plans to expand the availability of the tool for users in more countries. The company says users will be able to follow content on their hobbies, sports teams, updates from local officials, and others. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region,
A Venezuelan national is among 3 men detained by Trinidadian law enforcement authorities after a vessel was intercepted in the Gulf of Paria with marijuana worth more than 14 million Trinidadian dollars. According to the police, a customs and excise vessel was on patrol in the Gulf of Paria when the officers observed a fishing vessel with 3 men on board who were acting in a suspicious manner. The customs officials intercepted the fishing vessel and the 3 men were detained. Following an extensive search of the vessel, 295 packages of marijuana weighing 158.54 kilograms were discovered. The drug is estimated to have a street value of 14,251,542 Trinidadian dollars. On the international scene, 6 people, including 4 children, were injured in a stabbing attack in southeastern France. Police say the attacker is a man who was armed with a knife. He was taken into custody shortly after the attack. French President Emmanuel Macron has described the attack as an absolute cowardice. During Thursday's National Assembly, lawmakers observed 1 minute of silence for those injured. And evacuations are ongoing in Ukrainian-controlled areas of the southern region after the Kakhovka Dam was breached on Tuesday, causing extensive flooding. However, President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russian forces of shooting at rescuers in areas under Russian control. There are also warnings that landmines are floating in the waters. At least 3 people drowned in the Russian-occupied town of Koleshki. Concerns are growing that there might be many more casualties. And those are the top regional and international stories. I'm Carrie Simpson.
Thanks, Karen. We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your Midday Sports Report with Karen Madden.